Welcome to episode 154 of the Startup Show. Today I'm here in Zurich and I'm meeting with the Senior Country Managing Director of Accenture Switzerland, with Thomas Meyer. And we are talking about consulting and Accenture, but we also talk about how big corporates work together with startups. And last but not least, why students should consider working for a consulting company. Make sure to stay tuned for the whole video. Welcome to episode 154 of the Startup Show. Today we're here in Zurich and I'm very excited to meet with the Senior Country Managing Director of Accenture Switzerland. Thomas Meyer, welcome to the show.
Hi.
As you know, the majority of my guests are startups and entrepreneurs, but sometimes I really like to give this whole startup ecosystem a new angle. And that's why I enjoy to have you here on the show and to really have a discussion with you around topics such as startups, innovation, but also digitalization. But as usual, and I don't want to deviate from this habit, that we always give our guests a minute and a half to introduce themselves, so we really know who the guests are on the show.
So I'm running Accenture since 2003. I joined the company in '87, so I'm a dinosaur in the company. I've survived all the changes. We started at Arthur Andersen to Andersen Consulting, now to Accenture, a real global giant in professional services, consulting, technology and operations business. Besides that, I'm married, have a family with 5 boys. I live in Zollikofen near Zurich. I studied business administration. In my hobby, I'm the president of the board of Stoosbahn AG, which is a relatively small resort in the heart of Switzerland, which recently became famous to have been built the steepest funicular in the world.
Yes. Maybe you can explain to us what motivates you to be, let's say, being involved with such a project.
This goes back to my origin. So I grew up in the central part of Switzerland. I learned skiing in that resort. I always complained on what is not working. And one day somebody tapped on my shoulder and said, you cannot always complain, you have to do something about it. And I thought, okay, a good idea. So I got engaged into that, and then quite quickly it became evident that we have to find a new solution how to basically come from the valley to the top of that resort. And so the project was born quite some time ago. Okay.
Another board seat that you are having is the SGE, Swiss Global Enterprises. What's your role?
Switzerland Global Enterprise, formerly known as OSEC. That is an organization which is targeting Swiss smart and medium-sized businesses and helping them in the export situation, but also is promoting Switzerland as a location for others to join. It's an organization which is basically financed by the state, by the government, with concrete objectives of what should be achieved with regards to positioning Switzerland in the global markets, but also in terms of helping smaller companies in their export plans.
And when I was researching you online, there is one quote from you that I was intrigued for various reasons, but I want to hear your thoughts on that and why you wrote it. I fear that people are losing courage to make decisions. That is something that I read in your name.
Yes.
And I'm telling you why I'm intrigued, because when you're at a certain level in a company, you have to take a lot of decisions. There's this thing called decision fatigue. So that's why I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are behind this.
The wider context is that we do see that more and more people, for whatever reason, are of the opinion that somebody else is taking care of them. Be it the state or an organization, by providing all kinds of systems, social systems, education systems, security maybe from the parents that is coming. We're starting to see, in fact, that there is generations of people, which I believe is growing up in an era where they don't have to make tough decisions. I mean, obviously we all decide what we want to do, and we believe everything is kind of a given and nice, but we are not really used to make tough decisions and really decisions which potentially change the way we operate or the change we live and work, which might be needed in the near future. And by pretending that things are all in order, and somebody will take care of you, as we see in many, for sure, neighboring states of Switzerland, is the case. I think it's just completely wrong. I think we have to understand that at the end, and maybe this is a little bit philosophically, but at the end, people have to make their own individual decisions understanding the necessity to think also on behalf of others. So it's not an egoistic approach, but an approach where you also think of the needs of others, but to make to at the end care for your own destiny to a certain degree by taking into account of not being an egoist.
And what would you say? Let's say, what are these tough decisions?
Is it still correct that I study science as opposed to I go into creativity? Is it okay that I continue to work here from Switzerland, or do I have to go somewhere else? Should I learn English or should I learn Chinese? Is it okay to just rely on my parents that they look for me and I continue to live in the house, or should I move out early enough? Should I have a child, yes or no? Should I have it early or late? All kinds of decisions, which then at the end create culture of making decisions. In my profession, I work with large organizations. Very often, decisions that I see being made are relatively small decisions, but not big decisions. It's much safer to do small decisions as opposed to big decisions. And there's a kind of a risk awareness, understandably, because big decision very often are linked to a big risk, which has not only an upside but also a huge downside. And I do really believe, in order to manage transformation, really basic transformation, that some of our industries already have gone through and others will go through in the future, requires big and courageous decisions. And that is why I come back to this little Stoosbahn example, if you like, but we had to make really tough decisions. Do we continue to support this small village of Stoos by building something which will be really, really costly, or do we decide that sooner or later this whole thing will just have to be closed because nobody will be able to go up there? And we took the risky part. We decided for the risky part, and this was a journey that at the end lasted 14 years.
Oh, wow.
So not an easy thing at all, but had to be done. And once the decision was taken, we stick to it and fought for it with all the consequences, which is a great experience to go through, which I would like to give further to others to have the courage to take such decisions.
Now, for, let's say, the 0.5% out there who doesn't know what Accenture is, maybe you can give us a 1-minute idea of what you guys do here.
So Accenture is, as I said, is a professional services company with basically 3 businesses. So there's consulting business, from strategy consulting to management consulting, technology consulting, infrastructure consulting, so everything that has to do with consulting. There is solutions business, so everything that has to do with technology, SAP, Oracle, custom development, what have you, also the newer technologies. And the third business is operations, where we do operate business processes on behalf of our clients. So that's the 3 businesses that we have. Our target clients are typically, not exclusively, but typically the large multinational companies. So we are, if you like, in the same boat with them and helping them to bring innovation to the world to improve how the world works and lives. That is our mission. And we aim to do that through our support with those large multinational companies.
Now, as you know, we usually have a lot of startups on the show, and I get asked a lot in my network if I know anybody at Accenture or PwC, and a lot of startups have a lot of misconceptions of how the big corporates work with startups, and that's what I'm very curious to hear. What is your take? How are you working directly with startups?
Startups are very interesting for us in a piece of our collaboration with our clients that we call open innovation. It's very clear today that when you make those tough decisions, as I said before, and you start to really change things, nobody in the world can do it on themselves. Neither our large clients, neither ourselves, nor partners of us. So we try to bring together people that have an approach to a potential problem, and bring them into a collaborative environment, which we have here on the 4th floor, and a really nice environment where everybody can work together. And in there, startups play an important role because they may have a particular capability, an asset or an idea, which might be very relevant to help develop a new approach to certain things, or maybe already have a solution that can be integrated into something which needs to be developed.
Tough question is probably you also have to look digital transformation within Accenture itself. Sure. Yeah. And is there any space where you say we also look and work with startups together to improve processes or improve workflow?
I mean, our big theme obviously is collaboration. How do we work? How do we work together? How do you find the right skill? We're 450,000 people on a global scale. So how do you find the right person that can help you in a specific project? And there we are looking to work with others. Obviously, we have our big partners that bring a lot of innovation, be it the Microsofts, the SAPs, the Oracles, what have you. But also we have smaller ones. And examples I want to mention is, again, from here, StarMind as an example. So we're working with StarMind. So we're using their algorithm to help us find the right people or bring answers to questions which have already been asked before. We looked at Beekeeper at some point in time as an interesting way to communicate with people. And so we're constantly looking at those guys and see, can we do something? Be it on a local level, as it is here in Switzerland, and this may emerge into something bigger, or be it on a global basis.
And how did, let's say a startup is watching this now and saying, hey, I might have an idea. What was the process for Pascal and Chris?
Coincidence. Probably. I mean, you bump into those people.
Yes.
You have a discussion. We believe somehow there is a match on the personal level. Very often, it's very important. A personal level. Do you like or don't like this person, or is there somehow a intellectual match that we somehow talk the same language? And then you sit together and discuss. I recently was at the Kickstart evening as part of the Digital Day, Swiss Digital Day, just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how many startups there were, maybe 10, and I had discussions maybe with 7 of them for half an hour or even more. Yeah. So it was a full evening of discussions, and out of that there is some follow-up on some, and others, there is nothing which is in my case of particular interest.
What I would like to go and ask is about your experience with digital transformation. When you look at all of these big corporates that you work with, what do you see are let's say current trends, or where let's say the big corporates are really struggling at the moment?
Digitalization is by now a term which is totally overused and inflated. Now, obviously, this started in the last century, in the 50s, when first time a computer was used to do stuff better that humans did before. And we're on that journey now since many, many years. And what we see now is that there is a whole set of newer technologies or recent technologies which just increase the speed on how technology is being implemented and what the possibilities are out there. We're all under pressure now, or coming to a point where we have been using these technologies to a large degree, if I oversimplify it a little bit, but just to make the story, on cost efficiency. Particularly in the larger organizations, it be more efficient, save costs, do some, maybe increase the quality of a process. A lot of process re-engineering, a lot of automation of processes, many things that used to be paper-based or not paper-based any work. You have straight-through processing in insurance, in banking, etc., etc. Yeah. And that's all good. That's all good. The big challenge we are all having now is how can we work with those large employers, at least in our case, to help them also turn the value of digitalization in generating new business. And new business not just in something completely new, but in adding revenue to their core business. Not just transforming the core business to be more efficient, but in adding revenue to the core business. And also think on how you gradually, potentially can replace a decreasing revenue trend that you have in your core business with newer ideas and new businesses, new services, enhanced products. And I think that is the challenge. We have thousands of minimal viable products out there, thousands of proof of concepts, thousands of pilots. That's all good. But come back to my decision point. Where are those companies which really have the courage to turn a minimal viable product really into something real? And decide, yes, let's roll this out, test it really out in a global markets, see if it's going to work for the next couple of years. If it's not working, turn it down again, what have you. But I think the challenge is now to turn the view a little bit from a lot of focus on efficiency and profitability more to value to the customer, which then also can turn into potentially top-line growth.
What you mentioned a few times already is open innovation, also a term I would say that is used quite often, quite differently for everybody. So it would be good if you can give us somewhat of a definition. We've made plenty of videos about people who give me the definition of what they feel is innovation. What is your take on that?
This is part of our innovation architecture, is what we call open innovation, and this is in a way the process of scanning the market of what is out there in the startup community. How mature are they? How relevant are they in their specific industry or in a vertical business? And trying to incorporate them, as I said before, in delivering a new solution to a client. And potentially, if we believe there is really, a win-win situation in there, potentially add them through Accenture Ventures as, also invest into them. So the open innovation element, a big part of it is understanding what is out there. So it's a huge database that we operate, with thousands and hundreds of thousands of startups in there, the experiences we make with them, and see whether that is of relevance somewhere else in the world.
And do you also see, maybe as an example, you don't have to mention any names, but companies who claim something is innovation and it actually is not?
I wouldn't have something right now coming to my mind. I mean, if we're all honest, it's very seldom that any piece of innovation is just done by one. You always need a team.
Yeah.
And if you start fighting who has the right in it or not, it's going to be very, very difficult. Obviously, IP, protection of IP is an important topic. Potentially, blockchain is something that can help us there. I would say, copying something which is good for the better of the world actually is good. So, of course, we have to do it in a way that people somehow can live of it. Is there copying happening? For sure.
Yes.
But is it always bad? Not sure.
So I want to dig in a little bit more. You already mentioned blockchain. Where do you see some of the megatrends?
Still a big thing happening is the whole cloud. We're now at the verge of making this really, really big. I believe some regulatory items still to be overcome. In a way, coming with it is everything to do with security and cybersecurity, which I think is still highly underestimated what it really will take to deal with that issue. Blockchain is a technology that will have huge impacts in the future. I truly believe that, in changing the way we actually work and we collaborate across company borders, much more than on the Bitcoin side, but for other terms. And what is just in front of our houses is quantum computing, which will again change dramatically in terms of raw power and possibilities of what computer can be doing. The current hype is around artificial intelligence. Even again, that is 60 years old, the term. This has now come to a level where people start to understand that it's out there and we start to feel the benefit of it. So for the next foreseeable future, that will define a lot of our lives and a lot of our jobs. But in terms of things that that potentially may come to an end, I think it's also worthwhile to think about what will come to an end. I do believe, that's my personal opinion, that relational database is an example, something we really have to think of, whether this is really still going to be necessary in the future. Quantum computing, I think, is the next big thing.
Next big thing. Going from there more into looking at Switzerland as a country, I mean, probably there's not many other people who have such a broad overview of all the different corporates and what they do and what they're currently working on. Do you feel that Switzerland as a country with all of these different corporates is ready to take the next step, or making sure we stay on top of this ladder of innovation from the World Economic Forum that we continuously are number one?
At the end, what is Switzerland? Yes. Switzerland is a democracy that lives of direct democracy, and I think we have to protect that. It lives out of the cantons. We have a system which is based on delegating upwards only if you believe it makes sense, and you cannot solve it yourself. A system I very much believe in. So it is, in such a system, it is very hard to give directions or to implement a strategy, because things grow as opposed to things are being told you do that. So they grow somehow. Of course, we do have to figure out on how we continue to work on the conditions that can be set by the politicians and by the administration that allow people to flourish. And there I do believe that we are in a potentially dangerous situation, that it can become risky for a country like Switzerland. We do live from innovation. We do live from open trade and open borders. That has always been the case. And if we now see that on the World Economic Forum World Competitiveness Index, now we fall down from number 1 to number 4, one can say it's not dramatic. And it's not dramatic. I mean, there's many countries behind us. However, if the change that those countries that have been able to surpass us, If that changes on a exponential curve, then it will be impossible for us to catch up again. If the change is a stochastic one or a linear one, then still doing nothing is not a good option. So I really do think that the infrastructure side with regards to mobility, on e-government, on easiness of administration, easiness of doing business and doing work, there is a lot to be done that would help us to become more productive. There's one key indicator where Switzerland actually is not good, which is productivity gains. All surrounding countries have been much better in productivity gains in the last 10 years than Switzerland.
I was told that you have an interesting take on the future of work, how people are going to work together in the future, what people are going to work, and also how it is to bring in foreign specialists into Switzerland.
Two different topics in a way, but obviously the future of work is a question that everybody has in us, and the fact is whatever can be automated will be automated. Yeah. Technology, and I'm convinced of that, including artificial intelligence, is the primary purpose is to help humans to become more human, to focus on the things which we are good on. And I do believe humans are creative, social people, that element will become way more important in the future. It is not going to be important to be able to learn everything. And I'm very happy to hear that the history teachers of my son says we don't learn when Morgarten was because you can look it up, but we have to learn the bigger elements and understand the bigger elements, and that cannot be taught just by any machine. So the future work will be a work of where basically everybody will have to work alongside technology, visible or invisible, whether it's going to be a physical robot or a software or an algorithm or what have you. And we have to learn to deal with that and take this and become ourselves smarter and better in what we are able to do. I think that requires people that have the courage to accept that, and the courage to learn these new things and also understand that some things will fall away.
We have a lot of students who watch this show, and they are also considering now, especially when you graduate or finishing your master's, what should be the next steps? And one of the things, especially at the University of St. Gallen, it's either investment banking or consulting that a lot of people are looking at. What is it, let's say, that you would say it's interesting for people to come here to Accenture, but not only that, what is it that they're expecting here to see?
I mean, if you're interested to work in an environment where you will have the ability to just learn a lot, to potentially look at different industries, if you like, or to become a specialist in one particular thing, and to work in an environment where it's very easy actually to collaborate, because everybody is somehow in the same kind of attitude to learn and help each other. But if you're also happy to accept an uncertainty, because if you're in the consulting business, there is always going to be an uncertainty, what is my next thing? It's actually a very tough business to constantly employ, if you like, thousands of people with new engagements that at the end need to be relevant for our clients, otherwise it's not going to work. And if you are able or want to accept this uncertainty, then this is a good place. Very clearly, I would recommend that actually before you make the decision where you start, make sure that you're used to work. Don't focus just on studies. As I said, getting know-how into your brain may be important, but not that relevant, because that can be done, in no time by Googling something up or by some smart analytics or what have you. But try to focus on understand, what are the big things that are happening in the world, the big trends that are happening, and what we can do out of that. Become specialized in something, and that may be your interest, whether it is supply chain or talent and operational performance or technology or what have you. But continue to work on your T skills. We say also T skills, be a specialist in somebody and know many other things. And I do believe that the T bar needs to become thicker, not thinner, but thicker. It's a huge demand of people that have an ability to bring things together, that become architects in a way. Not technical architects, but just architects in understanding on how you can bring things together. We need those people, and we provide an environment that over time people can grow into these roles. That's a challenge, because we're only as good as our clients let us be together with them. And so it's not that easy actually to come in. Just a health warning, if I compare a student with the greatest grades coming from either ETH or University of St. Gallen or wherever, at the age of 25, 26. I compare this person to somebody that did an apprenticeship and worked on a Fachhochschule on a similar grade and joins us at the age of 24. There's a huge difference between those two people. The huge difference is experience in having worked, and the other difference is attitude. The guy that went to apprenticeship and maybe Fachhochschule, he understands exactly why he did learn something, because it was on a purpose. Many of the students, and I take myself as such an example when I studied in some college a long time ago, you could go there to get a grade, which then hopefully positions you better in this competitive world, to getting a job with not a real purpose behind it. So for those out there that have not yet started in studying or decided on the education path, really try to go into yourself and understand what is the purpose that you would like to achieve somehow in your life and with what you are studying. Because that will give you enough energy to absorb that relatively easy and allow you to do other stuff while you're studying. In order to get this practical experience, which will be important.
And also like someone who, let's say, makes a pretty life-defining or career-defining decision going into consulting, do you feel like anything will change over the next 10 to 20 years, the way consulting works today? Or is it going to be...
It is. Our business is constantly changing. It is driven by a major trend that we see in our clients. There is no longer just going to be a product development and the marketing and the finance organization. It is one integrated thing that things have to come out of one source. So being able to have this cross-functional view, understanding how experience to the customer can be provided, and the whole value chain behind it is a very critical element as we see it. And this functional segregation that we have still so far is actually a hurdle that we do have to overcome. And that is also impacting our business. I do know that in the early days, people in a way laughed at Accenture. Yeah, it's a technology company, they deal with technology. I don't like technology. I'd rather focus on strategy. We can't separate those things anymore. Cannot separate it. One of the benefits of digitalization, if I may say so, is the understanding of almost everybody that these things really belong together, and you have to be an expert, in many things, as I said, in this T-bar of skills, in order to really be helpful.
What are some tips for balancing work and life?
Don't differentiate. It's the same. It's your life.
Yeah.
I grew up on a farm. If you are a farmer, you're always a farmer. Don't differentiate.
How do you keep productivity high?
High energy level, a hunger to learn new, because if you learn new things, completely new things, the learn delta is biggest. And so I think at the end, productivity in producing new ideas is much better.
How do you make sure to be a good leader?
Only ask from other people what you would be able to also ask yourselves and be authentic. And
one I'm very curious to hear, because again, it's a lot of challenges also among startups. How do you make sure to keep good communication in your team?
Understand that sharing know-how is much better than leading through know-how. Sharing experiences creates excellent teams, not preventing information and not keeping information, but sharing it.
And last but not least, who is your role model?
My grandmother, for a simple reason. She also grew up on a farm, and at the age of 16, she went to London and France and wherever, and was always very open. Coming from a relatively simple background, she learned me many things in my life. Not the last, how to dance, which besides everything is important, because it's a good way of also spending your time.
Last but not least, as I told you in the beginning, you get about 60 seconds to leave your legacy on various social media channels across the internet, where everybody can see what kind of advice you would give them if you could give, let's say, yourself advice when you were 20 years younger or before you started at Accenture, something that you would share with my community.
Many of you have the intention of, it's very boring to work for large organizations. I rather do my own little business. I'm my own prince or king, and I can decide on my own. And in the morning I work, and in the afternoon I go do yoga or go surfing or tennis or what have you, which is a great life, and I understand. And and many of you are working in startups, and we need that innovation, as I said before. However, you look at any country, and if you have a feeling that you also want to do something for the country, and not just for yourself. Look at where the jobs are. You know, how many thousands of startups we would need that each employ 10, 20, maybe 50 people just to come up with the number of jobs that are being provided by the very large guys. We have, in a way, no other choice than to help all of each other to move these into the future. So by just focusing on your little thing may be interesting yourself, but you may not be contributing to the community and to a wider economic success. Obviously, not everybody can do that, and not everybody should do that, but I'm concerned about that. So the same way that as in my profession, I'm in the same boat with the dinosaurs, if you like. You know, and our strategy is to help those clients, as I said, to bring innovation to improve how the world lives with these target companies. And I dedicate some of my time to a very small company on the Stoosbahn. Maybe also the other thing should work. I think it's a combination of both that at the end makes successful communities, successful economies. And on a more personal side, don't be too strict on opinions of people. Don't judge people in the way they look. Don't judge people in their background. Don't judge people too much on where they're coming from, whether outside of Switzerland, inside of Switzerland, whether city guy or country guy. Be open to understand where these people are coming from to learn. It is very easy, whether you are in the startup community or if you're in the banking community or in the pharmaceutical community, it is very easy to fall into a trap of only thinking in the community and losing the perspective of many other things that are out there. There's so much value in understanding what is out there that at the end will help you connecting the dots and becoming a more interesting person, because you can relate things to each other and have an opinion which is an informed opinion on many things, and it makes it way more interesting.
Very good. Thomas, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everybody who tuned in today. Make sure to stay tuned for a few more seconds so you'll see who is up next week, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a great day.
Hi, my name is Andy and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Effective. Are you interested in the future of work and in particular about our platform, which is also called Tinder for Business? Then make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you.